You're listening to Actors with Issues with Juanialo, a podcast of actors, by actors, and for actors. Lacretta, you are on the Actors with Issues stage. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's go way back to the beginning. So how early did you discover performing? And did you know at that time that this is like what you wanted to do, or did that idea just come a bit later for you?
I was kind of pulled into it, kicking and screaming. I was 14, growing up in Kansas City, Missouri, and I thought that I was going to be a prolific playwright. I was a part of Kansas City's playwriting roundtable, and it was a group of teens, and we had a facilitator, a great facilitator who was also a professional journalist, and we would read each other's plays just so that they could hear it out loud and be, outside of it and hear it, and then get feedback. And the facilitator was like, Lacretta, you really should audition for the Coterie Theatre, which was the children's theater in Kansas City. And I was like, audition for what? And he was like, audition for the shows. And I was like, to write them? And he was like, no, you should really just audition and see what it's like. I was like, okay. I auditioned. Fast forward from 14 up until my sophomore year of college, I did many summers and many shows at the Coterie Theatre, and that's what did it. That gave me the bug.
Yeah. I feel like children's theater
Yeah.
is a pretty popular route for actors to
Mm-hmm.
sort of get their feet wet in theater and in this more broad comedy, because it's sort
Mm-hmm.
of a bit more over the top than, if you're doing like Chekhov or some classic theater, it's
Yes, yeah.
it's very
But
different
it's
sort
also
of.
really brutal. Kids are brutal.
Oh
So
yeah.
there is a level of honesty that you have to have in order to win over a young child because they'll just look at you and they're like, you are not funny. And it's like, wait, but this is my best stuff. It's my best stuff. And they're like, try again, kid, try again. So I feel like that is a great, I feel like everyone should have to perform for a child, whether you're performing in live theater or you're going into hospitals and you're talking to the kids.
Mm,
There's something that is you have to tap into your vulnerability in order for them to believe you. And that's really important because then that just carries over into your work when you are performing for adults who don't have as much, and we're not allowed to have as much imagination when we get older because we've got bills to pay, we've got responsibilities. So to be able to pull that from the youth and into your craft it's pretty important.
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
fast forward to today, you're now on Night Court on NBC, the revival of this classic legal comedy, and which was just renewed for a second season a couple months ago.
Yes.
So congrats are in order.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I have loved, as I mentioned before, we started chatting. I've had a few actor friends on the show, and they've just had like the nicest things to say, and have just
Oh,
enjoyed their time
good.
there and felt so welcome. And that's always nice to hear because sometimes you
Yeah.
go on a set and things feel a little bit, you feel like a stranger, like a new kid in school. You're
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know anyone here. And but yeah, I've just heard the nicest things about all of y'all. So
Yes.
yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. It's very important to Melissa. She wanted to establish from day one, listen, my door's open. If you need anything, let me know. This is your home away from home. And so I don't want you to go from a place that you love to a place that you hate. So let's just make this as warm and welcoming and inviting as possible. She's so personable. Everybody that she comes across, whether they have no lines, their background in the gallery, but I mean, I say no lines, but they're still involved and engaged, or whether it's like one of our recurring, or whether it's one of us in the ensemble. How are you doing? What's going on? Is everything all right? Can I get you anything? I love that because sometimes you go to work and you're just anonymous. And it doesn't matter what number you are on the call sheet, you can still feel like you don't exist there. And I've had that experience. And so it's nice to have the opposite now.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
were speaking before about sort of this these varying levels of comedy, and you've done a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work in theater and in musicals. And with this being your first, at least as far as I know, your first like multicam
Mm-hmm.
comedy, was it a challenge, or did you like just feel like you were basically on stage and sort of like back in your theater days?
Yeah, but mostly because it was we're gonna have a live audience. So because we have live audiences on Fridays, the crew and the cast that's not on are able to laugh. And so you're getting that instant feedback. You know what's working, you know what's not. You have your director there and the writers are there as well to kind of tweak things. But there was a level of familiarity going into it because the project that I had done before was a dramedy and it was single cam. And I was just saying to myself, Lacretta, you really got to trust yourself. You got to trust that you're funny. You have to trust that you've worked so hard to get to where you are. You're a hard worker. You're always prepared. These people that you're opposite of are heavy hitters in the business, but you've earned your place here. There wasn't that feedback. So I was like, I hope it's funny. But what we got to do is we got to watch playback. So then you could kind of gauge, and we would all, and I love that we all three of us would watch it together. So
Mm.
then we could see, and we would kind of talk to each other. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the director would come over, and he'd be like, okay, so I like this, but I didn't like that. So can you try to bring that in the next take? That was nice. But here, because we've got the audience and we also are, the director is right there toe to toe with us, it was so much easier for me to just not worry about anything and just do it and listen and respond. So I was really grateful about that because, it's such a learning curve when you go to hundreds to thousands of people in front of you, responding and clapping and cheering for everybody that's on stage to dead silence. And
Yeah.
then when you cut, then people are like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And it was just like, no, I thought you hated it this whole time. And they're like, no, we just can't because we have to have a clean take. So
Yeah.
yeah, doing multicam it was such a blessing to come from, and I didn't have to work so hard. So that's
Yeah.
the short answer of it.
And diving into the issues, given that our name is, or the name of our show is Actors with Issues, what comes to mind as a career hurdle that you have dealt
Mm.
with, or an obstacle that you could shed some light on for our audience of
Mhm.
young actors?
For young actors, I would say we are observers because we're actors. A lot of us are people watchers. A lot of us, we I call it my Rolodex of personalities. I've been around for a long time and I've met a lot of people, and you learn how to work with different people. We can't be so rigid. That's
Mm.
the unfortunate part about it, but that's the beautiful part about it as well. When I was going to grad school, we were encouraged to be malleable teachers, and that's not always the case. Sometimes, when I switched over to opera, they were very set in their ways, and you had to learn it this way. But if I didn't understand it this way, then now I'm frustrated, which is causing tension, and now I can't sing. So, to try to be the kind of teacher that is malleable and is keying into what your student needs, and then that flips. Now that I'm working with so many different types, we had a different director just about every week. So we had to learn each other all over again. But because I had my Rolodex of personalities, I could just go through and be like, okay, so this is how this person is. It reminds me of this person. And this is how I was able to work with this person. So it's just going to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you make your tincture, your concoction, so that you are able to communicate with the other person, whether it's your scene partner or whether it's a director or a producer, because at the end of the day, you want to be the kind of person that people want to work with. You're not going to work if don't nobody like you. There's a difference between, oh, I don't like you because we just don't get along. We're oil and vinegar, but we work together. We work well together. So you want to be the kind of person that people want to work with, whether you guys are buddies or not. They want you there, and so that's the main thing. Always be prepared, but also be prepared to work with different personalities and dynamic personalities and more reserved personalities, because you're going to meet all kinds. And it's so interesting for me to meet actors who are so dynamic on stage
Yeah.
and then so reserved when they're off. And I'm just like, you don't like me? Is this something? Did I say something? But I get it because they've spent all their energy, they've put their entire soul into the performance, that when they're off, they just want to kind of recharge, just kind of zone out, and then get back to it because the day's not over.
Yeah. Yeah. They're on
Yeah.
while they're on stage, and as soon as they're
Mm-hmm.
off, they're like, time to unwind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
energy, people who have that energy 24/7, God bless them. It is a lot of work though. I
It's a
know
lot.
I can gauge, as actors, we have to sort of be in tune with our our minds
Mhm.
and our bodies and whatnot. And we're just like, ooh, we're not going out after the show today. we're
You
gonna
better not go
we're
out.
gonna
I don't go out. Let's see. When I had the Sunday schedule in Avenue Q, I would not go out. Uh, well, any day that there was a matinee, I was not out that
Oh,
night.
yep.
But then if we had a day off where it was, I think it was Wednesday, like we had a weird, like a Wednesday matinee and then a Saturday matinee.
Uh,
So then I would kick it from Sunday to Tuesday. And then the rest of those days, I was like, let me behave and go home. But it's just so interesting. Like having this sitcom schedule is completely different. Like
yeah.
we leave work and it's still broad daylight. And you're like, oh, I'm so used to leaving work and it's 11:30, 12 o'clock. Then
Yeah.
when we get to Thursday and Friday, yeah, it's dark now, but I'm like, I've had the front of the week and the weekend to enjoy life. Now, this is the hard. I came here to work hard. I didn't come here to lay in the sun.
Yeah.
So I will give you Thursday and Friday to work hard and be a vampire because I have the rest of the week to be a day person.
And something that lots of actors, ask us to talk about is sort of dealing with agents and managers and how lots of young actors
Mm.
sort of struggle to find their first rep and sort of get that
Mm-hmm.
ball rolling. So, what advice do you have for a young actor who feels stuck because they don't have that team assembled yet?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's frustrating. And when you're frustrated about not having representation, or you feel like there are things that are outside of your access because you don't have someone who gets to see the breakdowns, then that kind of spills into your work. And having an agent kind of takes that pressure off of you. For me, the path that I took, which was a recommendation from another casting director, was to reach out to casting directors that you have a relationship with. Because at the end of the day, you want to work with someone that they want to work with. It goes all the way back to being the kind of person that people want to work with. Sometimes casting directors don't necessarily, I don't know if I should really say this, but it's the truth. Sometimes there are people that casting directors don't necessarily mesh well with.
Mm,
And it's not to say that they will not look at their talent, but it could be a little trickier for you coming in. So
mm,
if you talk to a casting director that you have a relationship with, I did. I reached out to Mary Sugarman. I reached out to Michael Casera. I reached out to one other person randomly to see who they would recommend for me. And then I took that list of recommended agencies and then whittled that down, did my research. Sometimes you can find things on agents, sometimes you can't. Sometimes we see these reviews and these are people who did not have a positive relationship getting into the agency. And so they're just like, these people are terrible. Well, they also have to be selective in the people that they represent because they want to give everybody their full attention. So going to a casting director that you have a great relationship with, that then will give you a smaller list that then you can truncate into a smaller list. So then you can reach out to them for meetings and go from there. At the end of the day, you have to, again, you don't have to be buddy buddy with everybody, but I would encourage you that if you can be discerning with the people that you have, to have a team that sees more for you than what you see for yourself. Because what I thought I wanted for myself was an opera career, doing recitals, maybe doing an opera here and there. That is not where I ended up because I had a team of people behind me that saw more from me. They don't have to be older, they don't have to be younger, they just have to be hungry, and they have to see things like thinking outside of the box. For me, seeing me in sci-fi, seeing me in action roles, seeing me where I don't see myself, so that they
mm.
can push for you. Because if you've got that kind of a relationship, again, y'all don't have to go out to dinner, y'all don't got to paint each other's fingernails, but if they have a hunger for getting you things because they want you to succeed, they're going to push for you and you're going to get through those doors. It might not happen overnight. For me, my overnight was 30 years. People are like, oh, you're an overnight success at night court. Da, 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 da. Yes, but it was a 30-year night. That's what it was
Yeah.
for me. So yeah, I mean, start with I'm repeating myself, but start with reaching out to your casting directors, see who they like, see who they recommend for you,
Mm,
because those are going to be the people that they enjoy working with. And then go from there.
yeah. Love that's such a great advice, really. Just, do your
Yeah.
research and
Mm-hmm.
actors have to, I feel like we've heard this time and again, but you have to sort of be the CEO of your little acting LLC and whatnot. You have
Mm-hmm.
to do your market research and all of
Mm-hmm.
that and assemble your team. I always see the, once you bring on an agent or manager, they're not a new CEO. That's your like your chief financial officer,
Yes.
your branding or marketing director. It's just
Hmm.
increasing your team rather than like replacing yourself. Because uh there's a industry adage, what is it? They only get 10% of your pay, so you still have 90% of the work to do. It's
Hmm. Hmm. That's true. And also, you know, I had to kind of take charge when things were lacking, and that was a scary thing to do as well. But at the end of the day, who's going to pay these bills? It's going to be
right.
me. And with one situation in particular, I saw that they weren't submitting me for things in particular, and I had questions about that. And they had this whole long form that they would give to their new clients, and I was like, "Oh, I would love to fill that out. May I fill that out?" So just to see where you guys are and where you see me and where I see myself, and I came to see that we were on two completely different pages.
Mm.
And when I would go out and audition for things at open calls, because it got to the point where I was like, I wasn't getting any appointments. So let me just see, because if it's me, I'll gladly take the responsibility and I will take the classes, I will do the work to get better. And then I was starting to get callbacks for things and callbacks for things. And I was like, but why didn't you submit me for this? And people would be like, oh my goodness, Lacretta, I haven't seen you in so long. How you doing? It's so good to see you. Well, but this person told me that you didn't want, and that wasn't a conversation that I ever had with that person.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking to myself, they literally told me that you didn't want to see me. I easily could have been like, oh, well, they don't want to see me there. So I'm not going to go there. But someone was like, no, let me see for myself. Let me see for myself if that is the case. And it ended up not being the case. So somewhere there was some miscommunication. And I was brave enough to stand out there and put myself out there and see if that actually was the truth. And that's a scary thing to do as actors, because we don't want to mess anything up, and we don't want to we don't want to burn bridges. But sometimes it's okay to walk out on the water and test and see. And 9 times out of 10, we're going to walk on it and it's going to be fine.
Lots of young actors listen to our show and sort of come for this specific advice from actors who are in the thick of it. I always like to call it that, like
Mm-hmm.
in the trenches. Not folks who have never done a self tape. They're so far in their career they haven't auditioned in 10 years. Like, no, let's talk to the folks
Mm-hmm.
who, and
Are
so
doing
thank you so
it.
much for being so open and insightful. Before we go,
Absolutely.
yeah, before
Mm-hmm.
we go, we always like to wrap with this question sort of about lessons learned. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that with every role that we take on, there is a lesson to be learned. So, working on Night Court, what would you say
Mm-hmm.
is a lesson you've learned in this process?
I've learned to be more free in the way that I respond to people. That's what I love about Gurgs is you never know. First of all, you never know what's going to come out of her mouth. But then also at the end of the day, every moment for her is honest and true and happening. And then she's on to the next thing. That doesn't negate what just happened, but in this moment, she is responding. She is so keyed into her personality and her spirit that it's a tennis match for her with everyone that
Mm.
she's with. But she's also not worried about how you're going to take it. And I find as I have gotten older and looking a particular way that I do, I often filter what I say so that I'm not labeled as difficult, or so I'm
Mm.
not labeled as an angry Black woman. And I think that's unfortunate, but I'm learning how to say things in a way that is going to be not defensive and not antagonistic. Is that a word? We're going to go
I
with
believe
that
so.
today to someone else, but to also stand in my truth, because that's who I am, and I shouldn't have to be anyone different to make sure that you're comfortable, because there's going to be some discomfort somewhere. So why don't we share it? Let's
Ooh.
share the discomfort, as opposed to me being the one that's uncomfortable to make sure that you're safe and make sure that you're comfortable. I shouldn't be self-sacrificing to make sure that I say the right things. And I also have learned how to communicate with people that if you do, if it doesn't quite make sense to you what I just said, that I can say it in a different way, because I've got my Rolodex of personalities that I can always key into and go back to and be like, okay, so they didn't respond to it that way. That's not how I meant, but that is how they took it, and that is valid. Sometimes we don't own up to that. Like we say things and we're like, well, they just took it wrong. No, 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 no. They took it the way that they did. That is valid. Let me see if I can say it a different way and we get on the same page.
Love that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Always be prepared to work hard and be great at it. Can we make at it one word?
We'll do a comma instead of and or something, you know.
Can we do an ampersand instead of one of those ands? Yes.
Well, Lacretta, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. For anyone who wants to give you a follow on social media, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at just Lacretta. And you can find me on Twitch if you're a gamer or you want to watch me cook. You can find me on Twitch at just_Lacretta.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Actors with Issues on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel for full video interviews. Actors with Issues is executive produced and hosted by Juani Ala. See you next time.